Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Pitstop podcast. It's going to be another great episode, Jake.
We've got a special guest.
We are joined by no other than Jack Aitken. Put your hands together.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for joining us.
No, my pleasure. Like I said, just on my way basically, so nice to drop in.
No, you were local in London, so it kind of worked out. I hit you up literally yesterday.
Yeah, it came around quick, didn't it?
How have you managed to plan this so quick? Well, Fab's done all of this on his own.
That's the best way though, because my calendar is always such a nightmare. I don't know if you found that with Ollie as well, but trying to find a date is an absolute disaster. So if I can just get a day in the diary ASAP, that's the best way.
Yeah. No, it's worked out really well. So thanks for being here, man. I'm going to dive in. There's so much to talk about, but I'm going to dive in straight away with you and Williams.
Ooh, yeah.
Why don't you tell us a little bit like that? So you're part of
my day job.
Yeah. Is that the Williams Academy?
Yeah. So basically, my main role with them is I'm the reserve driver, which means if either Nicholas or Alex, who are the two race drivers for Williams, have an issue, like they get injured or they're sick or they can't drive for any reason, then I'm the guy that would step in normally. So I have to keep myself fit, stay up to date with what's happening with the car. I do a lot of driving in the simulator for them, and just generally make sure that I'm ready in case I'm needed. And I'm like not crossing my fingers because I don't want to be like wishing for somebody to get injured, but it's a bit of a weird position to be in. So that's my job with Williams. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, you said about being in shape, and we kind of spoke to Ollie about this. I mean, that's pretty intense, like kind of the training that you guys have to go through and put your bodies through to be up to scratch with that. Is that the same with, because I know you do outside of Formula One, you do other racing as well, which we'll dive into that later, but is it the same kind of workout regimen? Yeah,
I think generally driving a car is a bit of a weird physical thing because you're like sitting in a bathtub position and then you're just moving your arms in the same way over and over again. So like going to the gym and hitting the weights individually, nothing's going to translate directly to having the strength to turn the wheel because I don't have power steering or being able to hit the brake pedal or holding yourself from all the G-forces. But if you do a little bit of everything, that kind of just means that you're a well-rounded, fit person, and that's kind of the approach that most people take. So I do a bit in the gym, I do a bit of cardio like running and cycling, I do a bit of anything really, rock climbing, swimming. Sick. Just try and keep it as varied as possible because it means I don't get bored as well, because it's not a lot of fun a lot of the time.
I can imagine.
This episode goes out on Thursday next week, so we got the Miami Grand Prix coming up this weekend. Does that mean you're on complete standby like right now? Could you be called out?
Technically I am, It's it's a difficult one because the races that are further away, like Miami, they, unless the call up comes quite early in the day, so like now-ish, like midweek.
Imagine your phone goes now. Right now.
Get on that plane.
See you later, guys.
We do live next to an airport, so you could just be gone in a matter of seconds.
Would be ideal. Unless it happens relatively early, then it means it's logistically quite difficult for me to get there. And there are other drivers that can be called upon, like some teams will lend out reserve drivers if it's convenient. So, I am a little bit. I'm always it's in the back of my head, like just make sure that everything's ready. But
especially with COVID.
Yeah, exactly.
If both of them caught COVID or something,
it's still very much a thing.
Well, that's what happened to you back in 2020, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Why don't you explain a little bit more about that?
That's right. We got someone on the podcast that has drove a Formula One car.
Yeah.
Okay, a real Formula One car.
Moving up in the world.
Shit's got real.
Lewis, I think, was the one that got COVID when he was... He'd already won the championship, I think. It was end of 2020. And basically, Mercedes chose not to call up their reserve driver, who was Stoffel van Dorn. And instead, they called up George Russell, who is one of their academy drivers, but drives for Williams. And the knock-on effect meant that I was called up to Williams to replace George. So it was all quite like domino effect. And it happened on the Wednesday morning before the actual race weekend. So fairly short notice.
Oh, shit.
Well, was that like a phone call?
It was like a phone call. It happened, actually, I got the phone call on Tuesday night. And then they were like, we're not sure what's happening yet. We just need to see how it all plays out, sort out the paperwork, but maybe you'll be driving. And then I was like, well, now I have to try and go to sleep.
That's brutal.
Wow. Called back in the morning and like, yep, you're in. You've got it for the weekend. So let's get started. And from that point on, it was just like flat out trying to get everything ready, because even if you're like fully prepared going in, there's still so much that you have to do when you actually get to the track and meet the team, or get into the car and make sure everything fits.
Yeah.
Going through all the media duties on the Thursday.
I mean, you would have to get a seat made for you for that, right?
I did have a seat already made, because again, that's something that you can prepare before, but you have to get it fitted into what is effectively someone else's car. Like, it's all set up for George, so they have to change everything, get the pedals in the right place, the steering wheel, make sure that you're comfortable. So there's quite a lot of stuff that had to happen very quickly. And it meant that until after the race finished, basically, I didn't have a moment to like stop and think, like, oh my God, I just like had my debut in Formula One. Like, that's a massive box in your life ticked. So yeah, it was really cool, obviously.
Wow, what a crazy story. You just randomly find out, you're going to be driving this weekend, Formula One car, replacing.
And that was your first ever time, that was your debut? That
was my debut racing, yeah. I'd done some like testing for Formula One teams before, both with Renault and with Williams earlier that year, but never raced. Yeah,
that's mad. I mean, so before that race, when was the last time that you'd been in an F1 car?
It was like June that year, so like 5 months before, quite a long time. And it was only for it was an FP1 session, so it was only for 30 laps or like an hour. So it wasn't the most extensive day of running anyway. You were really thrown into the deep end. Yeah, it was literally just like to get to know the car and double check that I would be okay if I had to jump in. Luckily I did that, because even just that little bit of driving time helps you to prepare and know at least what to expect a little bit. But yeah, it was in at the deep end.
That's insane. I mean, like, what does training look like for that? I mean, obviously you go out on the track and you do practicing, but kind of how often do you get to do that?
Yeah, because we weren't sure whether you actually get to, for example, do F1 drivers get to take the cars out to practice, or is it always in the sim until they're in like FP1?
Basically, until you get to FP1 on Friday, the first practice session, you're not really allowed to test. There are a few exceptions, like before the season starts, everybody gets a few days of testing just to shake the cars down and make sure everything's okay. But during the season, you're not allowed to just take the car and go and practice wherever you like.
So no one has like a private ring and they just go around?
No, they used to. People like Ferrari do have their own circuit dedicated for that from the old days when it was allowed, but they banned it to try and cut down on costs.
Right.
So now you do everything in the simulator. And then you just turn up on the weekend. You've got 2 sessions on Friday, 1 session Saturday morning, and then you're straight into quali. So you have a little bit of time to get up to speed, but it is quite like compacted.
Is it such a big difference between sim and car? Like, no matter how much you do in the sim, no matter how much time you spend in it, is the car so different?
Everybody wants to know how close the sim is to reality. They're getting like closer and closer all the time. Like, it's really impressive what they can do. The big problem is that at the end of the day, if you've got a sim that's in a room like this, even if it moves a little bit and it rotates and it's on little legs or whatever, you're never going to reproduce the G-forces that you get in the car. And drivers use those G-forces to feel what's happening in the car. Like when you feel the tyres biting into the track when you go into a corner, it's the G-force is telling you how much grip you've got. And if you can't have that in the simulator, that's making it a lot harder to drive, and you have to rely on other things like the feeling through the steering and your visual cues of what's happening on track. So it's a different style, and like I've done some esports where I've driven against sim drivers who that's like their whole thing. They do it 24/7. They practice full time on it and they're really good at it. And I'm rubbish. Like they wipe the floor with me because it's different. It's almost a different sport. So it's helpful to a point to like get the basic stuff down, but beyond that, it's not gonna replicate the real thing.
Are they doing anything to get it closer? Is there currently like any teams that have a higher or a better simulator than anyone else? Or?
Yes, I mean some teams have better ones than others. It's a question of money, like a lot of things in F1. So the top teams have some really advanced simulators, and the teams at the lower end of the field will have sims that are generally a bit older, and you're talking tens of millions to update a sim, so it's a lot of money.
And that really does make so much difference because it's the only practice you get.
Yeah.
I've never really thought about that.
I mean, I wanted to know, like, does the sim, I mean, in real life, I suppose the weather also makes a big difference on how the car's going to perform that day. Like, we know some about, like, the tyres, how they change the tyres depending on different country. So, I mean, in the sim, does it replicate, like, how hot it is and different tyres and the grip and stuff like that?
Kind of. Like, there's some things that the sim can do, which is quite impressive. Like, for example, you know, if you have the race on the weekend and then you come back to the simulator afterwards, they will want to run that track and car to correlate, to see how close they can get and make the sim more accurate. And they will take the recordings from the car of the wind, because the car can measure where the wind's coming from and how fast it is, and they'll just copy and paste it onto the simulator. So now you have wind in the simulator, which is really cool. And they can change the grip level depending on how hot or cold it is, but they can't then go the further step of anticipating changes. It's always copying it from what's happened in the past. So if you're preparing for a weekend, it's very hard to know what's it going to be like if it's wet, what's it going to be like if it's really cold and there's no rubber on the track. So that's harder.
Wow. We have learned some more.
We're getting very in depth here. Like,
we're desperately we want to get some of these sims. We want our own little championship, me versus Fab, and that is not anywhere near as serious as what you're saying. At the moment, we're playing the Formula 1 game.
Probably a lot more fun. Trust me. Like, the days in the simulator are really long, and like you have like square eyes at the end of it. It's
How long do you spend in it?
You start from 9 and you go till pretty much. Well, some teams will run until 5 o'clock and they'll finish and like have a good work-life balance, and others will run into the evening. And
what? That's so long,
man. I could not picture like spending like all my time off in a sim for that moment, and then you just go in a real car, like, and constantly doing it. But you must obviously love what you do. So.
I mean, yeah, I love it, but like the simulator stuff is hard because it's not racing at the end of the day. It's like driving again and again by yourself in a dark room, and like I can't do a lot of days like that. If I do 1 or 2 days in a row driving the simulator, I'm sick of it. So I do a little bit before every event, but keep it to a minimum.
Nice, man. That's really cool. So what other like racing do you do apart from F1? I know you do other stuff.
IndyCar, innit?
I've done a little bit, yeah.
Le Mans now.
Le Mans, yeah.
GP.
Basically,
look at me, I'm firing off everything now.
That's really
I've been
really
on
good
Google.
I've got a lot going on this year. So I did the IndyCar test at the end of last year, which was really cool. The American style of racing is kind of a bit more relaxed feel in the paddock. Like everyone's very serious and very intense. And in America, they're much more like friendly, I would say, with one another, like between teams and drivers. Generally, they all get on pretty well. It's quite a close community. So that's cool. And the tracks are a bit more old school as well. But this year, I'm doing a lot of endurance racing. So it's racing in like GT cars. So I race a Lamborghini GT3, which is sick. It's always cool to be able to say I race a Lamborghini.
That's sick.
So sick.
Makes a good noise as well, V10. And then I'm also doing some racing in a LMP2, which is a prototype car, which is what I'm going to race at Le Mans. So that's going to be my first time doing that. It's like one of the biggest races you can do. It's been on my bucket list for ages.
First time
this year.
Sick,
yeah, it's just over a month now from that.
Is that your next race from now?
No, I've got a couple races before then. Got one in the GT3 and one in the LMP2, and then I go to Le Mans.
So 24-hour Le Mans. You yourself aren't actually racing for like 24 hours, are you?
No.
I was going to say that. You would be
what? I thought that's what you have to do.
Well, you have a team of 3 drivers.
Oh, like a relay?
Yeah, basically. So and it's the same in the Lamborghini, even when we're doing like shorter races of 6 hours or 4 hours or whatever. Basically, everyone has to drive at some point for a minimum of like 1 hour in those shorter races. In Le Mans, I think it's a minimum of 6 hours. And you just tag in and out at the pit stops. You'll do a driver change as well as changing your tyres and filling up the car with fuel.
Do you have to jump out the car as quick as you can and someone else?
Yeah, it's pretty intense. Like you practice the changes and it's like acrobatic stuff.
Wow.
Because they're very like tight to get in and out of. The cockpits are tiny, and you have to have your own seat and everything, which you throw into the car, and you try and get belted in as quickly as you can. Obviously safely as well, because if your belts are loose when you go on track, that's going to be a bad time.
Oh my
God.
That would be absolute chaos. It kind of brings like another dynamic to racing. I think that's quite cool.
Yeah, it does. And the other thing that's cool about the Le Mans racing and endurance racing is you've got different races happening at the same time. So like you've got the fastest prototype cars, which are close to F1 speeds, racing on the same track as GT cars, which are maybe 20, 30, 40 seconds a lap slower, and they're kind of like moving chicanes. So you have to be able to navigate the traffic and the slower cars as quickly as possible, but also without crashing into them.
That's crazy.
Wait, so wow. So when you say there's more than one race going on the same track?
Yeah, at the same time. So there's like, at Le Mans, there's 4 categories, 3 different types of cars, all at different like pace levels. And like the fastest car to the slowest car, you could be closing down on them at a difference of like 100 kilometers an hour in some corners.
What? And you're all on the same track?
All on the same track, yeah.
Imagine team radios like that.
Sounds like a recipe for disaster, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, there's some good crash compilations on YouTube. So
oh my word.
It's very, very tricky because especially the slower cars, a lot of them are filled with gentleman drivers, which is basically, that's a name for a driver who isn't a pro driver by nature. Like they've come in late to the sport because they've made money or they're wealthy from whatever, and they've decided they want to give it a go for fun. And
so you're saying that me and Jake maybe could have a chance at...
You can.
You've just got to make a shit ton of money. And we can go to Le Mans.
If you've got a spare million, yeah.
Where is it? Is it France?
Yeah, France.
Yeah.
And it's soon?
It's in 1 month, yeah.
I could try and get a loan.
How well's the podcast doing?
We need a few more listeners, I think.
Insert some ads in there,
Yeah, adverts everywhere because we're going to Le Mans.
That's crazy.
We've always wanted to race some cars. Like just get out on a track and do
You
like
done some karting and stuff like that? Or?
I've karted before, but only ever as like parties or getting groups together. Never.
That's how I got into it when I was a kid. So
yeah.
Let's dive into that a bit more. I mean, when did you start karting, or when did you like first find your interest in like motorsports? Is it in your family already, or?
Yeah, it's in my family. I mean, my family weren't into racing as such. Like, we were more just into cars. So when I was a kid, we watched F1 on Sundays and Top Gear as well.
Yeah,
that was like the ritual, and like never missed a race or an episode. And yeah, like I say, I went to these karting parties with other kids, and I really liked it. So I kept asking my parents to do more, and eventually I got my own kart, my brother as well, who's a couple of years younger than me. So it became like a weekend hobby for all of us to go and do it at our local track, and just got like steadily more serious from there. I was 7 years old when I started.
Wow.
Really young, but most people are,
Yeah.
It's the nature of sport, isn't it? Like the younger you start, the more.
I think we've missed our cue.
I think we've absolutely blown it, man. We've absolutely blown it.
Well, they haven't said that. Seeing what we're like on the Ollie Sim, I don't think we're cut out.
Yeah,
for it,
one lap and I was pissing with sweat. That thing is hard work. You have to really push the brake.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know why, but for some reason I imagine driving it would be just like driving a normal car, like a wheel. And then, but when you're driving, you're braking and that, you're like, I thought I was going to break his sim.
Yeah.
Because we had headphones on, I couldn't hear any of you. Like, I was worried someone was saying, like, you're going to break it because I'm fully pushing the brake.
Well, the main thing that I noticed was that, I mean, obviously you guys don't have any like ABS traction or anything like that. And when we play that game, like we have obviously the aids on, the assists on, whatever you want to call them.
Everything.
But when we've like taken them off, like we come out of a corner and we're just sliding out straight away.
Yeah.
Like, what's the lowdown on like? I mean, do you have to like feather the throttle? Or
just
give us a run.
That's. I mean, you'd probably find it easier if you're doing it in real life. Like, it's so hard to get the feelings of when the tire is starting to break traction.
Yeah.
Like, you'll see, people like Ollie and me who've been doing it for years and years. We can feel a lot more detail than you guys because you don't know what to look for. Like, it's the tiniest things, like you feel the rear start to slide and the steering starting to change because it's going out of line. You feel the vibration from the rear axle spinning up, all of that kind of stuff, just telling you to like feather off the throttle a little bit before it gains traction and you can go back on. But it's just practice, like anything.
Yeah.
So just knock on Ollie's door a few more times. Maybe he'll give you a good.
We could start our own go-karting team though.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Pitstop go-karting team where we could hire a load of kids that are amazing, and we'd have our own Formula One team one day. Maybe
we've spoken about it.
They'll be a lot lighter than you as well. Yeah. Little younger kids, that's the problem.
Yeah,
because they're beating even me now. I turn up at my local track just for fun, and they're like 20 kilos lighter than me. and that's like half a second of lap time or something.
Yeah.
They're beating me. I'm like, this doesn't look good. It's like,
Apparently, I shouldn't be losing this.
Damaging my reputation. Yeah,
but karting's a lot different to driving.
it is
Racing like a proper car.
Yeah. It's a bit of a transition. Like when you go from karts to cars, it's a massive change because you go from something which, even though the top speed isn't that high, it's so nimble and it's so light that, and you can change direction really quickly, to a car which is a lot more powerful, but relative to the weight is actually a bit like a tank. And like it won't change direction as quickly, especially in the lower formulas where you have to start. So a lot of people struggle with that when they make that transition.
Right.
Yeah.
And what's the transition like between? So I'm guessing you've done like F4, F3, F2.
Yep.
Yeah. So what's the difference between that and then like going into an F1 car?
Pretty big. It's
because Ollie said it was easier.
Ollie's not driven an F1.
Well, Ollie said that an F1 car would be easier because they have like better, what was it, power steering or something?
Oh yeah, power steering.
Physically, it's easier because the F1 cars have power steering, and to be honest,
this, by the way, we need to bounce all of our guests together so that they know what we've spoken
so we can
about.
compare.
So we have like an ongoing. That would be sick.
No, he's right in some senses. Like the thing is, when you go from F4, F3 up to F2, you're always making a similar step. Like it's a bit more power. Usually they're a little bit heavier, a bit more grip. The car's a bit more advanced, and that's kind of a linear path that it takes. So it's not that complicated, and especially if you've got like a bit of talent or if you're a good driver, going into something that's a little bit quicker really isn't that difficult. The brain's really good at adapting to speed. The first time you go on the motorway as a driver, it's like, holy shit, what's happening?
I remember that day.
Panic all over.
And
then after 5 more days doing it, it's no problem at all. And it's the same when you're driving a car. The thing with F1 is it's not just faster, it's also way more advanced, and it's a car that's been purpose built for that year in a very, very unique way. It's truly a prototype, whereas F2 to F4, they're kind of mass produced, relatively speaking. They're built to a budget. They're built to be a one size fits all for all the drivers, and they're built to be safe and reliable over really fast. So it's like going from, I don't know, a Ford Focus, which is your everyday standard thing, to I don't know, a Bugatti Veyron or something that's really, really specialized. And you feel that in everything, even when you're changing the dials on the wheel, like the click is a lot more satisfying. It's crisp. When you're trying to change other settings, everything just works. You turn the wheel and there's no resistance. Like it's smooth, it's clean. Whereas F2 cars, by comparison, are a bit clunky, a bit agricultural. I could say more, but
Great. That's
so you're a big
crazy.
F1 fan yourself?
Yeah.
So do you watch it? You obviously watch all the races then.
Yeah, I lie to myself that I'm not, like, I prefer obviously to be driving than watching. But like I'll get up to watch the races if they're early in the morning. Like for Australia, I'll watch the practice sessions. I'll watch other types of racing. I've always watched cars and racing. So
who do you support? Do you have a favourite driver?
I obviously support Williams, and they are my favourite drivers. If I take them out of the equation,
which one is it? Latifi or Albon?
I'm not going to pick sides. They're equally good.
Were you good friends with Russell?
I've known George for a long time. Like we even were karting together when we were like 12 or 13.
Yeah,
go back a bit.
Yeah, so
because he's doing great.
He is.
He's having a great start.
I mean, he's a great driver. I didn't expect him to do anything less than that when he moved to Mercedes. So I think he's gonna, just keep growing and getting better and better.
I predicted him to win this weekend.
Really?
Yeah.
Bold.
What do you think?
Don't know. Car might hold him back.
Car might hold him back, but it's a new track. He's young and hungry.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of the teams know how the track's going to play out because it's something brand new for everyone.
First time.
Yeah.
So it could be a cool. Yeah, it might be a bit of a shake up.
Yeah,
we'll see. Yeah.
Looks like it's got a big old straight in it. 3 DRS zones. Obviously, this goes up after Miami, so maybe at this point we should say, who can you say you think's going to win, or you got to say Williams?
Yeah, but now there's a high chance that I'm going to be wrong.
You could give
that's the fun about it.
That's the fun of it.
I reckon it'll be Verstappen.
Yeah, did you? Nice.
Yeah.
You got him second.
Yeah, I said Verstappen first, Leclerc second, Lando third. Because Lando's been doing good, man.
Yeah, he's been on form. McLaren as well.
Yeah.
I want to see Daniel back up there as
well. I'd love
I'm
to
a
see
big Daniel fan.
Yeah,
actually.
yeah.
That's who I would say if I was not connected to, if I was taking Williams out of the equation. Yeah, because he's a super nice guy. It's like a lot of people, you look on the TV and like, I wonder if they're just playing up a bit for camera or whatever, but he is genuinely as he looks on TV in real life as well, which is pretty
That's
cool.
the thing, the drivers in person, right? So we only know what we see and Drive Survive.
Yeah.
And you have an in-person opinion saying Daniel Ricciardo is amazing, all this stuff. What's your opinion on Drive Survive then? Do you
Mixed.
like it?
Yeah, I was a really big fan when it first came out, like the first season and even season 2. Because I was like, no one's done this for F1 before, where they actually go into the sport behind the scenes, show people what's happening in the teams and all the rivalries, all the stories. And that's what makes it so much more attractive. And it brought in a huge fan base that's a lot younger, because before then, most people watching F1 were like, there's nothing wrong with that, but they were middle-aged men,
admittedly,
or
they
even
were.
older.
They were.
Yeah, and that was not ideal. So it's cool to see a lot of a younger fan base. I will say the last couple of seasons, I haven't really watched them, because I watched the first couple of episodes and I'm like, because I know what happens in the paddock, and I see how they portray it, and it's like they are sometimes making stories a bit more out of...
That's what we've heard a lot, man.
Yeah, just embellishing things a bit too much, or even sometimes misplacing footage over team radio and stuff like that to, change the context. And for me, that's going a bit too far. But it's still bringing in more and more people who are, they're coming up to me and saying, I never watched F1 before, but I've watched Drive to Survive and it was amazing. And now I'm going to watch the racing.
Us.
So, it's like a double-edged sword,
I feel like the idea they've got, and with the amount that does happen, realistically, they could easily get away with not having to, change things around. I get why they do it from a production point of view, obviously, like for clips, and it's all of the music and build-up and conversations. But I do think for the next season, I'll be surprised if they have like anything fake or edited, because they've had such a backlash from the biggest season like really ever, like recently, that was huge.
Well, Verstappen didn't even want to be in it, did he? This last season.
Yeah, and that's the reason why he said he just doesn't want to. I think he doesn't want to be in a position where they're portraying him to be something he's not, or having rivalries with people that he's actually quite friendly with and all of that stuff. So
I liked it in the early seasons when it was like following Haas and like following, what was it? It was like, it wasn't following the main teams, was it? Because I don't think they had the access. I like that in a way.
I think the first 2 seasons, Ferrari, Mercedes and Red Bull all said that they weren't going to do it. So it was all focused on like the midfield battles, which was actually pretty cool.
It was cool because you found out stuff about them which you probably wasn't reported on before.
Because you see so much of the top teams anyway. It's nice to see what's going on at the bottom end. Yeah.
Well, let's hope the new season comes out this season and it's just real and it's realistic. Hopefully we have a load of battles.
Keep it real.
It is a great show. I love it. I mean, we wouldn't be here without it, and I'm sure there's millions of other people that think the same. But it is good that everyone kind of is on the same playing field. Like, we don't need fake rivalries.
No, exactly.
For me, I think aside of the rivalries, it was nice to because when you watch F1 on the TV, I mean, all you see is kind of the race. You see a bit of the pre-race stuff, but it's nice to get an insight into the people. Do you know what I mean? The people, the drivers more. So,
no, exactly. And I've seen that kind of documentary or series done for other sports, I don't know.
They started in football. Did you see that?
Yeah, football. But even before Netflix were doing it, a lot of American sports do it really well, whether it's the NFL or motocross or whatever.
No.
Yeah, and I think it's like you say, people are interested in the stories, aren't they? It's one thing seeing the race happen on TV, but then knowing the emotions that go into it for a team or the struggles that they're having, it adds another layer, which is really good.
I mean, it's so serious on TV, but obviously you guys have a bit of banter, I'm sure. I know that you're dubbed as a bit of a joker in the paddock, so I've read.
Yeah. Well, it's like people want to keep such a professional look because it's a very corporate world, F1. There's a lot of money going back and forth, sponsors, teams, prize money. So they don't really want to do the wrong thing. That's slowly getting better. I think the last 10 years, it's
we've
really
come along.
Yeah.
And we don't know anything. No, a lot of people have said that's exactly what we've done. Because we just came along and we've just chatted shit and learned, and we're not like being told what to do. We're doing exactly what we want.
But it's genuine, and it's like it's a bit more fun. You don't want to necessarily have, because I think that's what F1 struggled with before. It was only for people who were like anoraks about it and who were willing to sit down and watch 2 hours of strategy, basically. And there wasn't anything else human or storing about any stories around it. And now it is a lot more fun. And there's a lot more younger presenters coming on board, which is really cool to see as well. It's not just ex-racers from Formula One. So
I mean, do you think the drivers are younger? Because I know, I think again it was Ollie who said like you actually used to be able to get into Formula One earlier. But I swear, I mean, when I was a kid, maybe it's just because I was a kid, but I used to look back and think these guys look so old. But now, like I look at some of the drivers and think they're literally, I mean, they're obviously younger than me. I'm 20, so you're 26 as well, right? And
I'm old.
So we're all 26, so it's fine.
Nice. But there's like guys driving who are like 19, 20, 21.
Yeah, I think the general trend, like in all sports, is getting younger. Like people are getting professional from an earlier age, which is, I think, not the best. Like I didn't take it seriously until I was like well into being a teenager. And even then, you know, it's hard to know that that's what you want to dedicate your life to, and like have a career in that and take that risk as well. And I've seen like Verstappen, Leclerc, Norris, they're all good examples that basically from when they started karting at 5 or 6 even, they were like, this is what I'm going to do. Or their parents were like, this is what you're going to do.
Kind of pushed into it.
Have you always been, this is what I'm going to do? Or has there ever been a point in your life where you wanted to do something else or have tried something else?
I think for me, I grew into it because like when I started racing, it was just as a kid who like, this was something that I was good at because I was very scrawny and small and light. So I was naturally, I had an advantage there. And being scrawny doesn't help you in a lot of other sports. So that was what I gravitated to. But I didn't like decide that's what I want to do and I want to try and have a career out of it until I was like 16 or 17. Wow. So that's like a lot. That's like nearly 10 years of me just racing because I enjoyed it and I was relatively good at it. So it's quite different to like some of the other approaches that you see now where people are being funneled into it a lot younger.
And if you weren't racing, what do you think you'd be doing otherwise?
No idea.
Can't even think.
Something with cars, but I don't know. When I was I finished until my A levels at school, or I did my A levels, but then I had no idea what I would have done at uni. That's part of the reason why I didn't go, and I decided to do the racing full time instead. But I've always been in motorsport and in cars, so yeah, something in there.
So, and when you were in F2, because you were in F2, was it F2 to Williams? Is that how it worked? Did you get?
I went to Renault first, actually.
Oh, okay.
So I was a Renault Academy junior when 2016 when they first joined the sport.
Was that when were they filming Drive Survive then?
I can't remember.
Or was that the next year?
I think it was like a year or two after, like 17 or 18.
Yeah,
maybe. But yeah, I joined them first while I was still in F3. And kind of stayed in the academy when I was in F2 and then became the Williams reserve driver after that. And that's what I've been the last 2 years, basically 2.5 years now.
Yeah.
I'm just reading here, so I've got a few notes. First year in F2, you were racing for ART.
Yep.
And Russell was actually your teammate.
Yep. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, well, so you were teammates with Russell?
Yeah.
That's sick. We didn't know that.
It didn't go well for me that year. It was a bad year. George was really strong. He won the championship.
Right.
And being teammate to the guy who's winning is like the worst position you can be in because you have the comparison to your teammate is the strongest thing.
Yeah.
But like it was cool to see me and George being teammates. Like nearly, I think it was over 10 years from when we were karting together when we were like 12 or 13. Just shows it's quite a small community.
It's a bit of a family, a bit of a tight-knit community.
Yeah, there's a lot, especially from the same nationality. All the British drivers are pretty close. It's the same for Italian drivers. Generally, you grow up racing each other, so it's hard to like avoid each other. As well.
And most of the drivers in the paddock like friends, like at least friendly. Because Ollie said about like drivers' meetings and stuff. Like if you go and sit all 20 of them in a room together, is everyone like friendly?
Mostly,
I can imagine if there was like a crash or something or someone's called something, surely they'd be fuming because I saw that video the other day of like Danny Rick going up to the Ferrari garage
to apologise to Carlos.
And I was thinking like that was really nice to see. Like, that's kind of how I imagine it if they're all like quite friendly in that.
I think most of the time it's like that because as well, I mean personally for me, it's very tiring to have a like a sour relationship to hate someone or to be hated. And, you spend so much time around these people and in close contact, it's just not worth it a lot of the time. But there are sometimes repeat offenders who get a name for themselves, or they get the wrong kind of reputation, or people who are just a bit more like naturally aggressive
Max.
in the way that they... not saying any names.
You can't say any of them.
I mean,
I'm allowed to say
You
it.
can say whatever you want.
I mean, to be fair, he seems quite popular. Like, he gets on with a lot of drivers, just maybe not some. But yeah, especially in F2 and F3, where you generally have more crashes than in F1.
I can imagine like F2, F3, F4. There's it's like a lot less friendly. Is everyone like
probably is a little
because they're like battling more?
Well, because you're all fighting for the same thing. You're fighting for very select places on the F1 grid.
Yeah.
You've got a grid of 20 or 22 drivers in F2 who, on average, in 1 year, maybe 1 or 2 F1 seats will come up. So there's a lot of desperation, and like fighting for those places is very intense. So
who do you think will go into F1 next year that isn't there now? Is there like someone that will come up, or F2 driver?
Maybe Porsche, who's doing okay for ART, but I say that mainly because I think Alfa Romeo are very keen on him.
Yeah.
They wanted to sign him, I think, even last year maybe, but it was a bit too early. So if he has a good year this year, he would probably make the step up.
And then would the step up be to reserve driver?
He might go straight to the race seat.
Wow.
Actually.
So I mean, I assume... I guess
Bottas.
Well, it has to see how it plays out with Joe, right, for his first rookie year.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Joe's obviously, I think he's doing pretty well, actually.
He's actually doing well,
doing
right.
great. He's got a quick car.
Yeah, well, exactly. It helps as well.
Yeah.
So we'll see how he gets on, but yeah, Porsche could be one for sure. Piastri, who's the reserve at Alpine, I think he's pretty desperate to find a seat, even if it's not with Alpine.
Yeah.
And then, there's always a surprise performer out of the F2 grid. So, it might be someone like Drugovich, I think he was leading the championship, but not anymore. Could be Lawson, who's a Red Bull junior. Vips, another Red Bull guy. So, yeah.
We've been loving
really
watching the F2.
Yeah, it's always good entertainment. For me, I prefer to watch the F2 and sometimes the F3 just because it's non-stop action. Like compared to F1, you can't take your eyes off it. Yeah. For better or worse,
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. I mean, yeah. Well, yeah, I agree. I think we...
Good work,
that camera just threw me off. No, I agree. It's nice that the F2 follows the F1 round, that you can watch it beforehand, because I don't think we ever would have really watched the F2 before, but now that it's on before the race, obviously you're just going to watch it.
Yeah, has it always been on before?
Yeah, it's always been...
Okay.
They don't travel to all of the races.
I didn't know that.
The more you know. Yeah, it's generally a couple of hours before the F1 on Sunday, and then they also have a race on Saturday, which is... Well, it could be whenever, depends where they are. But yeah, they'll follow all the European races, and then maybe they'll cherry pick one or two of the flyaway races. They went to Jeddah this year, I think.
Yeah.
And they'll go to places like Abu Dhabi as well, Bahrain, which is pretty cool because as a young driver, it's very rare that you get to race outside of Europe.
Yeah.
Going back to Jeddah then, so what's your thoughts on that track? Because we saw last year, I don't know maybe as much this year, but last year it was absolute chaos, right? There was so many crashes. Do you think that the crashes is part of Formula One and it makes it more, I mean, obviously I said this before, you never want to see someone get hurt, but it makes it more exciting, I guess.
It's a really hard question. I think generally everyone is in agreement that the safer you can make something, the better, whether that's the cars or the tracks or the rules around what we're doing, because the consequence of losing someone is just too high. Having said that, it's completely true what you say. The thrill of the crashes and the danger is what makes Formula One so appealing to a lot of people. And in the 60s and the 70s, when you had, I think at one stage, you drivers were dying every year. Sometimes multiple drivers in 1 year. That made it super popular because people are fascinated by that, and seeing people who are willing to put their life at risk racing at those speeds is really amazing. So it's that hard balance. It's a core thing that makes the sport really interesting, but I don't think we're willing to take that risk. So somewhere like Jeddah, even though it did have a lot of crashes and it looked quite dangerous, it will have gone through a pretty rigorous safety inspection before. They will have, you know, checked out all the walls, the angles of the corners, said, is this going to be too fast? Do you need more runoff here? And I'm sure because all the drivers were, you know, raising concerns about it, before they go there next year, they're going to maybe have a think about whether they need to change some things.
Yeah. Wow. What's it like driving in the rain?
I like it because I'm British, so I'm used to it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Like,
that makes sense.
It's, yeah, generally British drivers do pretty well in the rain. But it's cool because it takes what we were talking about earlier about the lack of practice to an even higher level, because it's very difficult to practice driving in the rain. You can't really organize it, and when it does happen, it's very unpredictable, like how much rain happens, if it's you know, I don't know, a lot of standing water or just a little bit damp. So it really plays to a driver who can do it on feel and like adapt to the situation. And
it was like that in Imola.
Quite chaotic.
When we were out in Imola, like it was just crazy. Like it was so wet, and then it would suddenly stop, and then there'd be a massive cloud, and then it would absolutely piss with rain. Imola was like, that was our first ever Grand Prix we went to, was Imola. Yeah,
and the sprint was dry, wasn't it? The sprint was dry.
The sprint was dry,
I think, but the race was
we can't even remember.
I can't remember. I think it was a dry line at one stage. I remember watching the F2 and it was chaos because it was a little bit damp offline. Yeah, it's so easy to make a mistake in those conditions. Like you go half a meter wide and you're going to be in the wall because it's suddenly you're on the wet part of the track. Yeah, which is, I like it. It's pretty cool, but
cool, man.
Not everyone does.
So you got your next race coming up is that in a couple of weeks?
Yeah, a couple of weeks. So this is actually like a luxurious amount of time that I've got at home. Normally it's every week or every other week, but I'm home for a little bit and then I'm in Imola actually.
Oh, nice.
I'm driving the LMP2 there for a 4-hour race. Yeah.
Oh wow! And is that you for 4 hours? No, again.
No, sharing the car. Yeah, it's not. It's pretty. Like,
imagine you coming out of that car after a 4-hour race, dripping with sweat, like probably can't even walk.
I mean, at Le Mans you can do 4-hour stints in extreme circumstances. It's
so that's obviously all the way through the night. So the guys, is the track lit, or do you have like headlamps on the car?
No, you have headlights.
Really?
Yeah, it's intense.
Well, it's at night.
Yep.
It was 24 hours in Le Mans. Unless they have 24 hours a daylight.
Oh, cut. Oh,
that's just when I thought you were doing well.
I had to blow it at some point.
So cool. Well, we've learned quite a bit about you. Again, this is a little segment that we like to kind of bring into like our podcast when we have guests on now.
Okay.
Is the few questions that we'll ask you to bring along to try and quiz me and Jake.
It's quite fun, like getting the host to become getting the guest to become the host.
Turning
for
the tables.
10 minutes.
How the turntables. Well, like on the train down, I was trying to think. The hard thing was I'm trying to gauge how much you guys know about the sport because, like you said, you're quite new to it.
Yeah.
Don't know if you're quick learners or not. So got some like different levels.
It'll be funny if we haven't got a clue.
Wait, is it about F1?
They're all about F1.
F4. They're all about F1.
All about F1, yeah. We'll keep it
great.
simple.
Great. If there's anything about Le Mans, I'm out of it. I have no clue.
For those of you listening right now, play along at home. If you haven't already followed the podcast, please do hit the follow button, subscribe, rate it 5 stars. It really helps us out. And without further ado, let's see how smart we are.
I get so nervous for this section, man.
So, first question I have, start basic. I hope it's basic.
We'll answer on 3 again.
Don't embarrass you guys.
All right.
How many cars are on the F1 grid?
Oh, okay. All right.
All right, we're going to be fine, I think.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, 20.
Boom.
There we go.
All right.
I did nearly
just
say
checking. 10. I don't know where we stand.
That's okay. I appreciate that.
Imagine straight off the bat, wrong.
17.
All right. So
just walk out.
What this one is about the rules about F1. Okay. So we'll see how good your knowledge is. What does yellow flag mean? And bonus points. What does a double yellow flag mean? If you want to, ramp up the difficulty.
Okay. I've got it.
Yeah.
3, 2. We'll do yellow flag first.
Okay. All right. 3, 2, 1.
Caution.
Safety car.
Yeah.
It's that. Caution. Safety car.
And
sometimes.
Double yellow flag would mean safety car coming out or debris on track.
Kind of. Yeah, close. So basically...
Oh, nice.
He's doing pretty well. Caution. So your single yellow flag just generally means caution. There's an accident ahead.
So the safety car doesn't come out.
Not necessarily. Yeah, right. Not straight away. And a double yellow flag means there is an obstruction on track. Could be debris, could be a car, could be a person. So you have to be ready to stop, or if in the worst case scenario. And then usually, a safety car would come out at that stage. But it doesn't always happen.
Well, I'll take that. That's not so bad.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
I'll tell you who does need to swap, like Le Mans 24 hours, and people standing there waving them flags.
Oh my God.
Do you never stand and watch that?
Generally,
one of their arms
I think
is
they
like
do.
3
Like,
times
I'm
the
pretty
size.
sure they couldn't be standing there all night because there's a lot of accidents.
Yeah, and they have like 10 flags, I swear. There's so many different
Yeah.
colour flags.
Yeah.
All right.
We should get a job doing that, fab.
I've got another question for you. This one is about records in Formula One. So
Alright.
it's testing a little bit of history,
Yeah.
but not going back too far. Right?
Okay.
So Hamilton holds the record for the most wins in Formula One, which he broke, I think, like 3 years ago. Something.
Yeah.
Don't know. Before it was Hamilton who held the record.
Yeah, I got
And
this.
bonus if you can get the number of wins it was before Hamilton got it.
Yeah,
That's quite difficult.
All right.
Okay. Go
Person
for the
first.
guy first.
I can give you a multiple choice for the second part. Do the first one.
I feel like I have
I
the
reckon
second
we go
part.
with the second part.
yeah.
without
I feel
multiple
like I
choice.
have it.
Yeah, and I know Hamilton
All right.
as well.
Okay.
All right, so first one, 3, 2, 1, Schumacher.
Boom. Yeah, got it.
And the second part, 3, 2, 1, 77.
Oh, we got two different answers: 67 and 78.
78, yeah.
You were closer.
Oh!
It was 91.
Oh, because Hamilton's 103. I
Yeah,
should have known
103.
that it was more.
Yeah, he only broke it recently. It might not even be 3 years ago, but
Wow.
but not bad.
Thank you, man.
It's not bad at all. We're not
Yeah,
going to get
We're
exact
actually doing
numbers.
all right.
are
Do you know what?
we?
The only reason we know this because when we first started Pitstop, we just started putting up stats.
Yeah, like graphics.
So like,
Oh, really?
it's almost ingrained in our head.
When we started the
That's
page
cool.
originally, before it was a podcast, it was like a graphics. We were just making graphic stats,
Yeah.
and everyone thought these guys know everything. And then out of nowhere, we pump our face on it, and we're like, we don't know anything.
Change
It's
the
called
dynamic.
Google.
It was all Google. We lived on Wikipedia.
Pretty much.
All right, and then this one, it's like again, you can get multiple points for it if you get it right.
Oh, brilliant.
So the team that I started with in Formula One was Renault, which is now called Alpine. And this is a team that's been known to change their name and their ownership over the years, but always in the same factory and in the same location in
Okay.
Enstone. So they're kind of affectionately known as Team Enstone. So now they're called Alpine. How many teams back can you name to their original team, which was in the early 1990s?
And the original team was Renault.
No.
Oh, shit.
It's going to be a long one. Okay.
So, obviously, they're Alpine now.
I'm not going to lie. I couldn't have even told you that Renault was Alpine.
Really?
I thought they were.
Well, they're using a Renault. They're using a Renault engine, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought Renault was
I still didn't know they
Racing
used to be
Point.
Renault.
It was Racing Point Aston Martin.
Well, that's one of them.
No.
No, it's not. Racing Point became
Force
Aston
India.
Martin, didn't it?
The Racing Point used to be Force India, but that's a different team to this one.
Lotus.
Yes. That's
Yes, let's go,
Yeah.
Fab. Come on,
Yeah.
keep going. I haven't got
Also,
any idea.
Red Bull used to have a Renault engine, no?
One. Yeah. Yeah, but a different team.
AlphaTauri?
Sorry?
AlphaTauri?
No.
Toro Rosso?
No.
I'm just shouting at that shit now. I actually don't know.
Ford.
It's quite a hard question. I'll give you a clue. Before they were Lotus, they were one of the teams that
No, not Fiat.
they have been again. They've been one team twice. If that makes sense.
Oh.
The
All
same
right.
owner has had them twice, and you know one of them.
Come on, Fab.
Well, one of them's on the grid already, no?
Aston Martin.
We've just mentioned one of them, but it was the team that Fernando Alonso won his world championships with back in the mid 2000s.
You love Fernando Alonso, Fab. You love him.
We've had
He's your favourite.
we've had a similar question before. McLaren?
Oh my
Mercedes?
God, people are going to be listening going, oh my God, these guys are so stupid.
This is just, it shows how much more joy you have to learn about
Yeah, I know,
Formula
so much.
One. Yeah.
Well, we got
There's a
Lotus.
whole world out there. It
What?
was so I'll give you the rundown. So they're Alpine now. They were Renault when I joined them, which was like 5 years ago. Then they were Lotus, which you got. Then they were Renault before that, actually, which is when Alonso was with them.
BMW.
No.
Shit.
Good effort.
Yeah, but they started out as they were
Haas.
Benetton back in the day.
Peloton?
No, Benetton.
Benetton.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Which was
Braun.
Schumacher used to drive. Yeah, Braun was with them, exactly.
Yeah, Braun GP.
Oh, you knew that.
Jenson Button world title 2013.
And right before the first team who bought them was Tolman. So
Tolman.
that's going a long way back.
Wow, I didn't
though.
even know they were a team. Never
That
even
was
heard
quite
of
a
them.
hard question. So
That was really hard.
Yeah.
Kudos for getting the ones that you got.
That was a really good end one, though.
I'm gonna take that.
I feel like I ramped it up quite quickly from the first question.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that was
Yeah,
maybe
no.
a bit steep.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
did go from the easiest to something we're
shallow
never
into the
going to know.
deep
But we did well.
Yeah, no, you got a solid amount of points. It's all good.
Awesome. Well, dude, Jack, thanks for coming on.
Yeah,
It's
thanks
been
for having me.
Amazing.
Pleasure.
We have something to give you as well.
Oh wow,
We give
okay.
all of our drivers a gift.
Little gift.
Really?
Yeah, bring it out.
It's made the trip worthwhile already.
Yeah.
Got my tube fare back in gifts.
It's a
you're a
pet
driver.
lizard.
Yeah,
Because you're a driver, you get the same hoodie that I've got. Because I'm a driver as well.
obviously.
I just drive on the sim actually.
Look at that. Some
that is a Pitstop
some quality
hoodie.
merch to
Your
walk away
very
with.
own pit stop hoodie.
And the mission is
Thank
to
you,
wear it
guys.
to as many places as you can.
Yeah, couple requirements. If you're ever on TV, that has to come out straight away.
But
Get rid of that Williams stuff.
I'll probably
and
be
put that
able to
on.
wear this for 1 or 2 races, but then it's going to disappear because my girlfriend's going to steal it. So yeah,
Fair enough.
losses. What
Oh,
can you
well.
do?
Well, you guys can share it.
Yeah, well, yeah. We'll see.
Yeah, Jack, thank you very much for coming on. Really
Yeah.
appreciate it. For those of you listening, hit the follow button if you haven't already. There'll be a new episode on Monday. Thank you very much for being here. Rate the podcast 5 stars, and we'll see you guys soon. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, yes. That was good.
Awesome.
Quality.
Thanks,
Cheers,
guys.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, that was good.